Anyways, the last trait is openness. Openness is a creativity trait. It's also associated with intelligence, in that intelligent people, and I'm speaking technically of IQ, tend to be higher and tend to be more creative, which is hardly surprising. Creative people are more likely to be liberal politically, by the way. They like novelty, they like aesthetics, they like fiction, they like movies, they like art, they like poetry. There's something about them that grants them an aesthetic sensitivity, and that's an inbuilt trait. And it's not the case, by the way, that everyone's creative. In fact, far from it. We've used the Creative Achievement Questionnaire to measure people's creativity. I'll talk to you about that later in the class. And the Creative Achievement Questionnaire takes 13 dimensions of creativity, so, you know, writing, dancing, acting, scientific investigation, entrepreneurial activity, architectural activity, cooking, there's a handful of others, singing, etc. You know, the sorts of things that you would assume that people could be creative about. And then it asks people to rate themselves on a scale from 1 to 10 on their level of achievement with regards to all those creative domains, with 0 being I have no training or proficiency in this area, and 70% of people score 0 across the entire Creative Achievement Questionnaire. A tiny proportion of people are outliers, way out, and they're creative in many dimensions simultaneously and exceptionally creative. And it turns out, as you'll find out, that that pattern, which is called a Pareto distribution, where most people stack up at 0 and a few people are way out on the creative end, characterizes all sorts of distributions, like the distribution of money, for example, which is why 1% of the people have the overwhelming majority of the money. It's a different 1% across time. It churns, and you're much more likely to be in the 1% if you're older, logically enough, because one of the things you do as you age is you trade youth for money, if you're fortunate. I don't think the trade is really worth it, but that's the best you've got. So anyways, those particular traits, you can think of those as ways that you simplify the world, right? There's lots of different places that you can act in the world, and there's lots of different ways you can look at it and survive. That's why you can be a plumber and a lawyer and an engineer, and those all work, right? Even though they're very different modes of being. And you can have different personalities and survive, as long as you're capable of finding the place where your particular filters and behavioral proclivities match the demand of the environment. And a huge part, I would say, of successful adaptation is precisely that. Now, there are other elements of personality too. One of